everyone. So how are you today? So Assalamualaikum and good evening, depending on where you are. So I hope you can hear my voice out here. Okay, I think we are ready to get started. Assalamualaikum and very good evening. Hope everybody is okay tonight. I'm currently hosting this event from northern side of Malaysia. Thank you for joining us for the fourth webinar. I think third webinar series in 2022 with the theme of Multiverse, the Digital Twin. For those of you who just joined us, welcome. My name is Ahmad Syarainan Muhammad Syarani. I'm currently work as a Managing Director at Microcorp Sdn Bhd. I will be your moderator for this webinar today. And so as an introduction to the company, we are the company that providing solution on integrated workplace management systems. I would like to thanks to CIDB for the opportunity to be our partner in organizing this fruitful webinar. In today's session, we're going to discuss the topic of revolution of data integrity. We have been hosting a series of webinars successfully since 2021, and they have been well received by people from a wide range of industry. Actually, this webinar is aimed to explore how these intelligent digital asset, digital collaborative processes are enabling innovation and disruption in our industry today. As per today, we're talking about big data, and big data is a collection of data and technology that integrates and reports all available data by filtering, correlating, and reporting insight not attainable with past data technologies. And in the past, database tended to be limited as they only had to meet the demand of human user entering the retrieving data. With the emergence of e-commerce and internet search engine, database technology is now evolving to manage humans and computer. And today, with the amount of data growing by 50% each year, it is an information technology that is capable of managing, processing, and finding values. Those in this webinar session will be discussed whether how the importance of data can revolutionize the FM landscapes in the future. And with us right now, we have two guest speakers for today, which is Dr. Intan Soraya Rosdi, Chief Consultant from Microcorp Lab Resources. Assalamualaikum, Doctor. How are you?
Salam. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. And we also have Dr. Aliza Akmar Omar, Senior Lecturer from the Faculty of Management, Multimedia University, MMU, Cyberjaya. Dr. Aliza, apa khabar?
Alhamdulillah, thank you. Alhamdulillah, baik. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Intan Soraya Rosdi has a PhD in management, and she was part of research team in MMU comprising IT and management expert engaging in the design and commercialization of IoT-based technology to stakeholder in the Malaysian facility management sector. She is a certified HRDF trainer and also certified team-based learning facilitator, and currently the chief consultant with Microcorp Lab Resources, engaging in training and management consulting project with both public and private sector organization. Meanwhile, Dr. Aliza Akmar Omar also a HRDF certified trainer and also has a PhD in management specialization in strategy and innovation. With her 10 years of consulting experience in innovation and strategy area, she has worked with MDEX, TM, and several government agencies. And as a senior lecturer, the latest collaboration with the Telecom University Indonesia, where the research focus on leadership 4.0, and she is currently working on a book of organization learning technology. Okay, so before we start, we have a few housekeeping. Everyone is on mute. If you have any question for our speaker, please feel free to enter them into a chat box session, and we will be addressing question at the end of the session. Or you can also ask by raising your hand at the participant section at your Zoom platforms, and we are also recording this, and recorded version for today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session. Without any further ado, I would like to turn this over to our first speaker, Dr. Aliza Akmar. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yeah, let me, okay. All right, okay, so what I'm going to be, I'm not going to be presenting. I'm more of having a chat with you guys. This is basically the big picture of what digital transformation, big data, how they're going to have an impact in the industry, specifically. And towards the end, I'll work towards facilities management. Basically, right, so now a lot of people, people in general, right, industry in general, they perceive strategy to be about decisions, right, decision making, and it is basically for the sake of getting an organization to achieve its objectives. I've been teaching and I've been guiding companies on strategies, and there is always this thing that nags me. If you look at the conceptual definition of strategy, it seems very sterile. Does not talk about the people involved in the task itself. Strategy is the combination of both art and science, basically numbers and observations. So strategy and big data have always been connected. Strategy has always been about big data. Strategy has always been about looking at data so that we would be able to make the right decisions. So when I would see strategy as decision making, but to capture value for those that matter. So this would mean people would be able to benefit from those decisions. Organizations will be able to benefit. Anything and anyone that is involved in that decision will be able to benefit, will be able to capture the value, will be able to benefit from the decision that has been made. So this is what I think strategy should. When we look at strategy in this context, where strategy is all about people, it's all about the things that people do, it's all about the the things that people utilize in order to realize the decisions, then we'll find that strategy is a little bit more complex than what is perceived.
Yeah.
Okay? Right? So what you see before you here is basically most of the time people perceive that strategy is all about profits. So we do what everybody does, but we do it better. So that's the whole idea of competitive advantage, to be better than your competitors. So what your competitor is doing, so we do it better. So we'll gather all of the data about the competitor, about what they do, about their products. And a lot of organizations seem to perceive that that is how strategy is. It's not actually. That is basically doing what everybody else is doing. So it doesn't give you that advantage. It doesn't, it's going to be very tiring. That is the reason why if companies constantly look at their competitors and find a way to be better, so you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're constantly paying attention to your competitors. So this is where big data becomes important. Big data is basically the way how an organization can look out to be different. And strategy is all about being different. is about being able to provide that unique proposition to your stakeholders, to the people. Understand, what we do, what the organization does, what an organization does to serve its stakeholders. Once we are able to understand what an organization does, right, then you will be able to know the type of data that an organization needs. So only then you will be able to know how to do things differently so that you'll be able to deliver that value, right, to your stakeholders, to your customers, to your people, to your employees, to your suppliers and whatnot, right? So this is what decision making is about. The decision making is not about trying to be better than your competitors. The decision is about how you deliver that value to your competitors. Now that is strategy, right? And in order for us to do that, we need to be able to look at the right type of data. Okay, so this is where big data becomes highly significant, right? Just because we are operationally effective does not mean that we have a competitive advantage, right? So it's never sustainable. So once you do something good, your competitors are going to start copying you, and vice versa. If you see your rival doing something that is good, you are likely to want to copy it, and that's very exhausting. So we need to be different. So strategy is about doing things differently. It's not just about doing better than everyone else, right? So now let's bring this context to the idea of digital transformation, to the idea of big data. Okay, digital transformation is about transforming an organization to base its decisions. This is where I included this small bit here, internal and external data. When we are faced with data, a lot of times we don't realize it, but the internal data, which is basically the organization itself, right? And the other source will be the external data, what's out there, and it's massive, right? So that is the reason why big data is big data, right? Because basically all of the available data that an organization is able to produce, is able to consume, is able to retrieve, is able to obtain. Okay, so this is where sometimes you have all of this data, right? And you don't know how to go about doing it, right? So this is where it's important for an organization to be able to understand itself. So the organization needs to be able to know what it does. It needs to be able to also understand its industry, so that only then, okay, the data that it needs to help in its decision-making process will become a little bit more apparent, will be more difficult process that every organization would have to go through, be it any industry. Okay, so when we look at digital transformation per se, okay, the whole idea is about the strategies. When we derive strategies, right, purely for the sake of digital transformation, it's all about using technology, right, and to be able to deliver that value that we derive, okay, to the customers, to the stakeholders, to everyone that has a connection, that has a relationship to the organization. Okay, so this is where when I mentioned about how an organization needs to know itself, right? In particular, an organization will also need to know who its stakeholders are, right? Its customers, its suppliers, its distributors, anyone, any is a stakeholder. So as an organization, we are obligated to understand who these stakeholders are. That way, right, then we'll know the type of data that we need to retrieve pertaining to these stakeholders, so that then we'll know the direction that we want to go to, that an organization needs to go to. Okay? So this is where when we want to gather, right, the data, massive big data is described by virtue of the volume, by virtue of the velocity, how quick you can get the data, how quick the data is able to impact the organization, you know. So it's massive. Okay, so while trying to work our way through all that data, it's important for us to actually once we understand the goals, right, then we'll know the types of data that we would require, that we would need, right? Because we would not be able to need all of this data. Okay, it will be very difficult. And when I work in strategy, when I work with an organization, right, to look into its strategy, this is where I would help the organization to sort of like weight across all of the data and see what matters to the organization the most. And this is where the organization has to see it from the perspective of its stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, the organization exists for the stakeholders. The organization will never be able to exist if not without the stakeholders. So this is it will be good for us to understand who our stakeholders are. That would be able to help us to narrow the categories of data that would be helpful for us. Okay? And once we have the categories of data, then we would look for the right data. What are the data sets, or what are the specific data that would be critical to the organization at that moment in time? Okay, and then once we have that data, we need to be able to manage, right? We need to be able to look into that data and and respect the ability for that data to assist the organization, right? So once we respect that data, okay, then we will be able to use that data well. Treat it with respect, so that then we would be able to achieve what we need to achieve with that data in mind. Okay, so that is where sometimes you know, we tend to underestimate data, and when we don't look at it in the right perspective. So this is where data analytics would help, right? This is where we need to look at the data and be able to understand its worth. Only then we'll be able to benefit. Okay, right? So this is an interesting diagram where having the right data helps, but we need to also pay attention to the quality of data. So this works well with the topic that we're talking about today. Data out there, it's absolutely impossible for us to actually identify each and every bit of data. But once we do get the data that we require, it's imperative for us to be able to ensure that we get good data, right? So there are factors that can have an impact into the quality of the data, right? So there are forces that can impact the data negatively. We use the data wrongly. We don't understand the data. The data is being used by the wrong categories of people. Okay, the data it appears different to different types of people. So people use the data in silos. So it's difficult to make the connection. It's difficult for the data to communicate with one another, the groups of people to communicate with one another, because sometimes there's so much of clutter, there's so much of data that people are not able to identify the data for what it's worth, right? There are also positive forces that can actually enhance the quality of data, right? Where there's evidence, quality of method, the quality methods that have been used to obtain the data, the use of that data, the familiarity of that data, the tools that that the data relies on. Okay, so these there are many forces that can actually, or there are many factors that can actually affect the level of quality of data. So we need to be very particular in terms of how we want to use the data. Very careful in terms of how we obtain the data and how we want to be able to use them, because we are going to be making decisions based on this data. So if we mistreat the data or we disrespect the data, then there's a likelihood that our decisions would be highly impacted by it. Okay, so now, how do we, I mean, facilities management in particular, okay? Facilities management has always been seen as non-core. So, but right now, and I wouldn't say just facilities management, I would say practically every industry right now, clients are beginning to require products and services or service strategies aimed at predicting events. So they do not just want happens. They want solutions that are ready, right? They want ready solutions even before a situation happens, right? They want us to be able to predict. So this is where data becomes very critical, because data right now, the idea would be to look at big data and see whether we can use them to help us predict, to help us be a little bit more predictive, so that we would be able to come up with predictive strategies rather than rather than corrective strategies, right? So clients now do not want you to come in to correct a situation. Clients want us to come in and say, this is what we can do, and bring us forward. That's it, right? So this is where we on hindsight, we need strategy. The difficult part, but big data can play a big role for that. I think big data will help us to actually give us an insight into how predictive an organization can be in terms of deriving solutions. And I think this is where digital twins can play a role. Digital twins, in layman's term, digital twins are like 3Ds. So when you are able to provide solutions that would allow an organization to put their client 2-3 steps ahead of everyone else, that would be superb. That would be brilliant. Okay, so, and I think big data is the way to go. On that note, okay, we need to have an insight into we would be able to see how big data can have an impact. And I think Dr. Intan, right, will be able to carry forward, right, my discussion, right, and she will be looking into the user perspective in terms of how the impact of big data, right, towards an industry or towards facilities management, I perceive, right? Yeah. So if there are any questions or if there are any what do you call it, add-ons to what I've just touched, right? This is the bare, what do you call it? It's a superficial, just a superficial discussion, which I hope it would, you know, push towards more, a deeper, a more enlightening conversation from the audience. I hope that, you know, we can invite Dr. Intan to help continue my my conversation, my discussion, right? So take it away, Dr. Intan.
Okay, I think I think Dr. Reza, maybe I may add something, you know,
Boleh.
your thing. When we talk about these digital twins, big data, we talk about stakeholders, okay? So when we create the strategy, we always talk about the clients. We always talk about the upper level management. It's always about the dreams of everybody, okay? That how to become much better, okay? But maybe we forgot about the people that whether they are supplying the data. And these are the people, when I look at your graph, just having your previous slide, you know, it's very interesting slide. So we forgot about the people that actually are going to supply the data, are going to process the data, and then and are going to create the data to become more meaningful before somebody else can use it, or before somebody else can refer it as a report in the dashboards, you know. So we always forgot about these people, the people element, which is whether they are lack of skill, not even a professional skill, you know, the lack of skill on understanding the data or understanding about the beautifulness of when they have data, what they can do. So this is where I think we are lacking on that, because of we forgot about these are the frontliner that providing the data, creating the data, but we forgot to make them understand about this big data element that actually came from them. So without them creating it, you know, so whatever strategy that we create or the element of mission and vision that we want, you know, we can't meet it, you know, because it's not talking about just they are going to work in silo, because they don't understand about they are the creator of the data, but they don't. We are not make them or we don't train them, or we don't provide them awareness. You know, we always give the awareness about the higher level management, what is the beautiful of this big data for them. Okay, but to the creator, so we forgot. That's something that industry need to look back, that this awareness is not just about the stakeholder, but we forgot about the biggest stakeholder in the operation team is they are these tactical teams. So something that I found out very we need to improve this our industry on this, because otherwise the creator are not going to provide quality data because they don't understand. And then another part is that they are not enjoying the process, because they thought that it's tedious for them to do it. You know, they not enjoy that creating the data. You know? So something that I think this is something like I like this forcing impact data quality, and I want to touch base about the people, but it's not on the high level, but the people that creating the data.
Very true. That is the reason why people always perceive strategies to be of a top management responsibility, that the people at the top are the ones who actually are supposed to be making the decisions. But people forget, or basically sometimes leaders forget that in order for them to make the right decisions for the stakeholders, you're going to have to rely on data that comes from the lower levels of management, the people themselves.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, as per what you have mentioned just now. So this is where sometimes the hierarchical levels can actually create an obstacle where you know, people they look towards the hierarchy is about.
Yeah.
So you're very, very correct. Sometimes people forget.
Yeah, I think the simple data that being created that is not being appreciated is that the guy that writing the name at the entrance of the buildings, you know, so they're not being teach or they're not being put up a awareness that why whatever that they wrote at the books are going to be meaningful for the buildings and later on, you know. So and then because of that, I think just a simple things, you know, but because they don't understand that what they do is actually contributing the further processes, further analysis that people want. Because of that, so instead of we make them easier, we create the difficult part for them to do the jobs, you know. For example, by not integrating the card access, whereby they can make the security personnel life easier on collecting the data of the occupancy of the buildings. Okay.
I mean, even the lowest level, the janitor can actually be an excellent data creator, and you know, the organization can actually benefit from you know, obtaining data or observing the janitor in terms of, because a simple what do you call it, individual as the janitor, the security guard, they are the ones who actually observe what goes into the organization, who comes in, who goes out. You know, I mean, they are major contributors. So you're right. Yes, it's very true. A lot of people tend to underestimate this.
Yeah, I think this is something like, for example, you know, when we want to study the patterns, we tend to use digitals, we implement a lot of things, you know, but we forgot that to ask the personnel that in front that actually know the pattern, but because of that we thought that their knowledge is very low level and we don't care about their input on the pattern that they see daily. Because we don't capture that, so we end up that we just rely on the data on the digital methods that we use. We forgot about the human touch of these low-level people that know the pattern, of behavior of people that utilizing the building. So this is another big data that we thought that we capture by the IoT, but we have another section that we miss. You know, this is the pattern, the behavior pattern that cannot be captured by the IoT, that only can be captured when you process the data. But then, if you don't sit in the facility, you might not understand what data that been, what result that already been processed, and maybe we are going to get a wrong interpretation from the aspect of the numerical that we produce. That's something that I just want to add, Doctor.
This is where culture plays a role.
Yeah. So this is another element of that big data, but it's not, I always say that it's intangible data that we are not collecting.
This is the like we, at the beginning when I was saying strategy is the art and science of decision making. This is the art part.
Yeah.
The softer side or the qualitative aspect.
And then when we get the results, you know, sometimes we forgot about the arts. We forgot to compare back to the security personnel, to the janitors, you know. So we want to ask them whether, look, okay, we already processed this data. We want to know what is your insight about the situation, when normally we forgot about it. So,
true, very true, very true. Nice point. Nice point.
Okay, I think that's from Dr. I think we need to, I mean, from Dr. Aliza, we need to listen what Dr. Intan are going to share
Yes.
before we
Yes.
discuss. Okay. Over to you, Dr. Intan.
Thank you, Encik Sharain. I was listening intently to all of Dr. Aliza's points. And I would have to say all throughout, of course, I agree with all her points. And I'm so happy to say that I think my points later will further add to what she was saying. Okay, first I will try to share my screen. Yeah. Okay.
Mana ni guys?
Tak tahan apa?
Aku ngantuk dah.
Ni.
Okay. Okay. So to continue our discussion, the revolution of data integrity. Okay, at my expert lab, actually this is I'm quite new with this company because I was previously a researcher together with Dr. Aliza at MMU Cyberjaya. We did many projects together. She was focusing on strategy. I'm focusing on the people, the HR aspect and innovation aspect as well. So in my line of work at my expert lab, we focus on driving employee performance, and innovative behavior at work. And interestingly, we've been getting increasing number of requests for us to look into, projects regarding digital transformation. And yeah, very interesting because that's the hot topic now. Everybody wants to transform digitally. So our focus, we always stress on the fact that we are very people-centric. Whatever it is, we always have to anchor ourselves. It's always come back to people. Okay, so I think that's the angle that I would like to offer tonight, approaching this topic on big data, revolution of data integrity from the perspective of us needing to be people-centric. What do I mean by that? Okay, we shall see. All right. So here's big data and facilities management. I think Dr. Aliza has said earlier that big data is huge, is big. So facilities management, also as other people in other fields, they face these, these hordes and hordes of data. If you see on screen, when you manage buildings, facilities, you have a lot of data coming in. In terms of air quality, in terms of, the lighting, the energy, the smoke control, everything that you have to manage. You have a lot of data coming in. Okay. So actually, being a practitioner of facilities management, you are faced with a wealth of data that you can actually easily collect. As Sharain was saying earlier, right? Sometimes some of the data doesn't remain in systems. Sometimes they are in people, right? Okay, those are the invisible ones. But even those data that we do collect, like room occupancy, in terms of restroom or washroom usage, a footfall, like people going in and out, where they are in the building, temperature, everything. Our asset location, even door opening frequencies also, everything is data, right? And then facilities management start talking about smart FM, about wow, now there's a dashboard, tracking the data. So I went in to actually see examples of dashboards. Here is one example that you see on screen. They can track the temperature, they can track everything. Meeting room occupancy, how many percent in during what hour of the day. Wow, all so sophisticated. Okay, so this all supposed to be useful, okay, for facilities managers or for the building owners. But the thing is, let's get back to what really matters. What are we trying to do here? Okay, so what is the big deal when it comes to managing data and facilities management being undergoing digital transformation? Basically, what it means is this: data has value to FM. How does data bring value to FM? because FM needs data. Okay, they need to make sense from the big data out there. They need to extract the correct data, as Dr. Aliza was saying over and over again just now, which is so true, because facilities managers need to manage the facilities, the assets. So something simple like indoor air quality, safety, security, the occupants' experience, right? The tenants, they need to manage all this. So as the saying goes here, you cannot manage what you don't measure. Or let me flip the sentence. If you want to manage something, like I want to manage the quality of the air in this building, because all the companies that rent the space, they want the employees to be healthy. So they want no molds on the ceiling and the air quality to be very, wow, now we put into well-being and all that, right? So we have to manage air quality. So if you have to manage air quality, you have to measure air quality, right? And you have to make decisions based on that data on air quality. That's it. Okay, so let's get back to that and understand it. If we have lost track, because all the time we face these big words, digital transformation, big data, and all this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just stop there. And okay, now that we've come into facilities management, we talk about managing facilities, managing buildings, but I'm going to come in as from another perspective, what I call the user perspective. They don't care about what you do. They only care about what facilities managers do once it impacts them, especially in a bad way. Okay, like if you visit a building and they face a lot of inconveniences when they maneuver themselves around the building. The toilets are dirty. You know, there's no proper scanning of temperature, especially during COVID, right? I'm very particular. I need to know that the building is being kept safe by the building managers, by the facilities managers, for example. So I look at things like temperature scanning, facial recognition, you know, and even what you see on screen here, smart parking. If I go anywhere, if they have a smart parking system, I can know how many empty parking bays are there. That's a big difference than going to another building and I'm very inconvenienced. I cannot plan my parking. And then now they have the traffic light system, the green and red, right? I can see where I can park and which parking bay is empty for me. And then lift, I don't want to touch the button because, oh, COVID. Oh, so I want it to be now, I read there's a hologram button. You don't have to touch the lift button. And sometimes you can just use your smartphone. You can program the lift, which floor that they will take you. So actually, if you come back to basics, that is the crux of what you are supposed to do as facilities managers. You are supposed to ensure that the user experience or occupant experience is all the way positive in terms of safety, security, happiness, you know, all that. So let's revisit that perspective. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do now. And true enough, when I started doing more and more research on this, after Mr. Sharon invited me to do this talk, I went into more research on this. And true enough, the experts are talking about the same thing as well. Because look at the quote that I'm showing you here. Okay, they say, well, data collection is everywhere. However, you also need to measure, other than measuring your temperature, your air quality, your footfall and all that. But what about how it impacts the occupants of the building, the users of your services? You know, don't you have to measure that as well? Because you exist because of that, right? So that's one thing that facilities managers have to note in all this busyness of this big data. Okay, now continuing on that, there's another quote that I managed to extract here. Look at what it says here. Many existing systems put facility management and property center at the center stage, whereas putting customers and services at the center stage is actually more important. And this is white paper looking at the trends into 2022. and in the future. So people are going back to basics. Hello, don't get lost in this plethora of this hoo-ha beluha about digital transformation, big data, because at the end of the day, you're supposed to make sure that your users and occupants' experience are, positive, pleasant, right? Okay, so I thought that I have to, it's good for me to highlight this to facilities managers. Now, coming to the concept of user experience, I'm happy to share, because when I was in MMU, I was invited to be part of this team. I'm from social science, right? This very, very happening team of IT experts in our faculty of computing informatics. And then they designed the smart toilet system. It's super cool. So when I wanted to join that, I was like, oh, this is taboo, man. This is this is a project about toilets, but I decided, what the heck, because it was very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting. And this project has won even international awards, so I'm happy to be a part of it. They actually try to leverage data to improve the user experience. That's at the heart of the project, because basically they put the what do you call that, the sensors in toilets, and their sensors can be fitted in any toilet in any building. Doesn't matter how old the building is or what system they have. Very simple. Okay. And I would like to say thank you so much, Encik Sharainun. At that time, you were one of my data source, the people I interviewed as an FM professional as feedback for this project also. Okay. Anyway, they have sensors, and then they can track the movement. Which toilet cubicles are being used, for how long. They can track usage, and then there is IoT, Internet of Things. All the parts of the toilet, they know how frequent they're being used, because they track and they predict after like 2,367 users, this pump will be damaged. So before that happens, they order the parts already. Something like that. So they call it predictive maintenance. Wow, some canggih word. Okay, predictive maintenance. And then what they do also, as the second point says here, they have an automated janitor scheduling system. After a certain amount of usage, and then okay, it's time for the janitor to pay a visit. Okay, because it's assumed to be dirty based on statistical data, and they analyze. Also, the users can actually give rating. Once it gets dirty, they also will roger the manager that manage the restroom, and then the cleaners will be there. Another very cool thing about the smart toilet system is that they have the smart toilet app. Okay, this is really leveraging data to improve the user experience. The smart toilet app, let's say the building owner, they acquire the smart toilet system. It comes with the app, so anyone visiting the building can whip out their smartphone and then download the app. They can know where are the toilets located in a building, which toilets are empty, which are occupied, what toilet, is it squatting toilet or sitting toilet, and then does it have a bidet, or does it have a water hose? All the details they know, and they can choose. Okay, I want to go to this toilet on the 3rd floor in the left wing. Especially when you have children in shopping mall, you want to know where, right? They want to go to the toilet, so you have to run there. You can use the app to do that. So it's like, it sounds super cool. So this is a kind of project that I love so much, because really it solves a particular problem very well. Okay. However, when I started to talk to professionals in facilities management, the building owners, I find that the reaction was not necessarily positive, because they started talking about, I think Encik Sharan also mentioned later, doctor, actually, why don't you think about this technology is good for space management? I was thinking, yeah lah. So I quickly call up my project leader, I said, you guys are missing an opportunity lah. Not just for toilets, but facilities managers out there, they need to manage the space. So your data is valuable. Why are you limiting it to smart toilets? I remember, I highlighted that to the IT team. So what are we looking at here? Okay, from the smart toilet project, we can track data. We can track data, like simple data, like how many % of people will go into the sitting toilet as opposed to squatting one. Which one prefer the toilet with the hose and the one with the dry toilet? We can track that. We can also track, like what parts of the toilet, what part of the building that the toilets are being used. Some toilets in some buildings never used, but yet they hire cleaners to clean that toilet. So we know that there's not enough resource optimization. We can track all that information. Okay, but what I noticed from that project was that while the data is good and they're using the data to do predictive maintenance and ongoing maintenance, but the data can also, the simple technology, the sensor, can also generate data for other users, not just for managing toilets. You know, what if you put it somewhere else? So the technology is the same, but the usage, it can bring a different set of values to the system owner, to the building owners. Okay, so this brings me to another point that I would like to share here, to raise here for everybody to think about. And when I start reading more and more about it, again, I got this confirmation from all the articles that I read. Okay, there's this increasing demand for tech technology that is multi-purpose. Okay, let's stick to the smart toilet example. Okay, when I read more and more about smart toilet, then I realized, oh, the project was not so terrible after all, because there are other experts who not just traced the sensor and the ins and outs of the toilet, but there's some toilets that can actually, as you can see here, Stanford, yeah, in 2020 even, scan human waste for signs of disease. And then another university, they can actually, the toilet seat can read the vitals of heart patients. So there's this, multi-purpose tech technology that is being in demand. Okay. However, I want to pull you to what Dr. Aliza and Cik Sharain also, I think you mentioned earlier. Wow, seems like a lot of data that you can collect even from a smart toilet. Okay, but do we need all the data? For example, if the smart toilet project just now that I was mentioning, install it in a shopping mall, does the smart toilet need to collect data on people's health inside the shopping mall based on the business that the shopping mall is in? No. Okay, that would not be relevant. In that case, you don't need that data. However, if you're installing a smart toilet in a hospital, that data will be so valuable to the building owner because it can enhance their operation. And like what Dr. Aliza said, it can be used to provide them a competitive advantage over their competitors because they're doing something different. You don't need to send your patient to the lab to collect his waste there and analyze his urine, okay? Because just when he goes to the toilet, you can collect the sample there. You see how mind-blowing is that simple technology can be for an organization like that? So in other words, the relevant data always matters. What data is needed by the business to drive its operations forward? So facilities managers, building owners have to sift through all this available data and extract the right type of data that will actually bring value to you. So that's the important thing that I would like to raise. So as some key takeaways here, it's very simple, okay? For three things, basically. Measure and track what you need to manage. What you don't need to manage, you don't need to track, you don't need to measure. Then if not, you'll be sucked into the whole, the swirl of big data, and then you will be suffering from data or information overload, right? Next, use tech to not just use technology for technology's sake, because you're jumping on the bandwagon of digital transformation and technology, but use it to prioritize user experience, bring value. When you get that facilities management contract, you actually bring real value to your customers. And then the multi-purpose tech is the way to go. I want to reach out to my own experience. Very recently, I was in Cyberjaya. I was in a smart building. They're very proud of that building, I know, in Cyberjaya. I was entering a smart elevator. And, during this pandemic time, our expectations are different already, right? When we go into elevator, we also think about our, safety, right? So the elevator, based on my access card, the elevator will send me to the floor that I'm allowed to go to. However, I noticed that the elevator doesn't manage the number of people coming into the elevator. So people started, coming in. Then I was thinking, you know what? If the elevator is sophisticated enough to bring me to the correct floor, traffic management by the elevator, smart elevator, why can't they program the system to manage the number of people that is allowed to go in, because they can control it through my access card. If elevator number 2 has enough occupants, like, so the elevator shouldn't send you to elevator B, elevator 2. They should send you to another elevator from that floor. So you know what I mean? So this is like, maybe the company acquired the tech, but then realized that they limited the application of the technology. So how does that bring value to your organization? You spend the money, but imagine if you can do more with the data that you have to serve the organization, to serve its visitors better, you might as well make your technology work better for you. Okay, so that is the part about the multi-purpose tech being the way to go. So I think these are the things that I want to highlight. I would be happy to answer any comments or queries after this. I'm sure a lot of practitioners out there have their input from their experiences as well. So I think thank you. Back to Encik Sharai.
Thank you, Dr. Intan. Yeah, I think the smart toilet is actually very interesting project that I involved, and I also involved on the, it's not a project, but it's a live activity when I work together with our partner in Turkey. So we want to manage the performance of the cleaner in managing the cleaning activity of the toilets, how long it takes for them to move, how long it takes for them to clean a toilet. And they start to, they want to measure the performance because they have a 1,000 bed hospital that they need to manage. Then they want to know, quantify the numbers of personnel that they require in order to manage this 1,000 beds hospital toilets in Turkey. So, and what we did is that we are actually utilizing the quality management techniques, the lean management, and we time the performance of the cleaner in order for them to fulfill their jobs. So then from that, so the company managed to have a right numbers of personnel to comply with the performance requirement that have been set by the hospitals in order for them to make sure that the toilet always been clean. So I thought that's something that is, are you sure you want to measure the performance of the cleaner? So yeah, but this is something that's, they are doing it, and I think in last 12 over years ago. So we use that kind of thing, even though we don't have the IoT to measure the, we want to hook up we want to locate where is the cleaner is all about. So at that time, but so it's not just about the utilizing the technology to do a digital transformation, especially when we have the data, but how we want to do it, and what value we want to capture, that's most important. And then whether we can use multiple technology and it's not costly, but we can get the same results. And then after that, after we get that result and we know that we can create more value, only then we apply or we deploy how can the IoT help us to do it. So we are not excessive to design, excessive design to create a technology, but we are creating a technology to meet what value that we want to measure. And we are actually can, instead of we use the current technology, maybe we can use the leftover technology, like maybe the what we have, like we have a leftover technology a lot here. We have streaming, we have copper cable, So this is something that's we move things because of digital transformation. We thought that we want to transform everything, but actually we don't realize that we need to go back to our strategy again, maybe we need to apply the strategy in the big data, and maybe it's not just about strategy about the management or strategy about the company, but strategy, we need to relook back at the strategy on managing this big data, how we need to apply the SWOT analysis again to the data that we have in order for us to create what data that is supposed to contribute a big value to us. Otherwise, it's like Dr. Intan said lah, we decide something because we want to, just for the sake to join the bandwagon, and then we throw everything that we already created for the last previous years, and it's still using a technology, and we end up that we have something. I mean, we need to invest more things for the sake of digital transformation, but we don't understand what actually want to transform. Because digital transformation is happening, it's not now, it's happening maybe 20, 30 years ago. Whenever we have a new technology, I remember that we talk about digital transformation when I do some in my research about digital transformation. So every 5 years, every 10 years, we do digital transformation. But whether we are really transforming our mind towards to use the technology that we have is something that we need to ask back ourselves. It's very simple. Every year we upgrade the handphone. We are transforming ourselves, utilizing by having upgrading the handphone for the sake of digital transformation. No, we are not. No. We are actually we go back to outside the people-centric people behavior. We thought that we thought that utilizing the application are going to help a lot of people, but we forgot to restudy the correct things. For example, like Dr. Intan mentioned about this data, we are conducting energy management. Okay, we start to do a survey of energy management, audit of energy management. We got the results, okay, but then the result we can't produce a right baseline because we don't have the space information. Not even we don't have index. So we don't have the space information that want to relate back the survey, the energy audit that we have, and we pay a lot of money for that. But we can't use this kind of big data because of we don't establish the fundamental of the space information. Just a basic thing. So I think this is something that when we talk about data integrity, so how integrity the data that you want to go. We have the results. We cannot use it to compare back to what we have, but then we want to start to use this result to move forwards. And when we start, I mean, I don't know how to say it because I believe that this information can be very unuseful because of we can't use back the result as a baseline because we lacking. We talk about data quality just now. Dr. Liza said, we talk about data integrity, how integrity is data, if we can't use back to use the result that we produce to measure back and then to come up with the more planning, more strategic planning to achieve. As simple as energy management. As simple as energy management, we do audit and then yet where we ask how many meter that you have for that particular building, 1 meter. Okay, then why we spend more things to get multiple meter? IoT is is the solution, but again we forgot about the space data. I just use simple analogy that which are the space that actually not require energy. So as simple as that question, we can't produce that result. So yet we want to measure the energy. We need to fulfill the Prime Minister direction those days. How we want to set the minimum of 26 degree, 25 degree by reducing the energy usage. But we are not able to establish the real fundamental method that we have. That is very fundamental data that we have, but we don't have. That's what. Okay. Sorry to add more. So let's click on the question. Okay. Okay, Misha here. What is the Misha have a question here? Looking forward, what is the big data challenges to implement the data integrity? What is the big challenges to implement data integrity? Anybody, Dr. Intan, Dr. Aliza, how can we make sure that this big data, what is the big challenge to implement data integrity?
Dr. Liza, you wanna go first?
Well, one of the, well, from a Malaysia, from, you know, I mean, being in Malaysia, one of the things that I come across most organizations, or the organizations that I've worked with or I've done projects with, I tend to find that organizations in Malaysia tend to be in silos. And I think that can actually impact data integrity, in the sense that when departments from all of the different departments will not be able to communicate with one another, because they've all been used, or they've all been constructed for a specific reason, for a specific purpose. And once that happens, then the data would end up being very, very restricted. It will not be able to have that value to the organization as you would expect. So I guess from a Malaysian perspective, I would see the siloed approach to be a challenge. And I think Malaysian organizations should take, you know, a big step towards being more collaborative, because you'll tend to find that data that we would be able to find data to bring greater value if it is it has an impact in many ways, in many categories, in many aspects. So I think if the data has been collected, or has been gathered, or has been obtained from a collaborative approach, you tend to find that the data would fetch greater value for everyone involved. So I think that would be one, to me, that would be one of, you know, the biggest challenges that, you know, organizations in Malaysia would probably be faced with.
I think data as a commodity is interesting, because if, like Encik Sharon was describing earlier, you were focusing on a certain type of data, like I think it was what, energy consumption, right? But you also need to link it with the space, you know, data on space usage.
And then further we are going to link it. I mean, this is a further analysis about it. We link it with the what is asset inside the space. So and then from that we also come up with the further analysis, further what is the behavior of people using the energy or using the assets in that particular spaces. You know, so this is something that's the analysis of, when we talk about big data, then it's not just stop at the inventory, stop at the surveys. I mean, this is like it's evolved, you know.
I think what is this, because coming from my perspective, because I do engage in research, Dr. Liza and I, we're from the research background, okay? We have that, whenever we do research, we have to have that research rigor in the methodology. Whenever you are analyzing anything, you have to identify all the relevant factors that you have to analyze. If you miss out some, okay, of the factors, you're supposed to look into that factor so that it is combined into a nice equation. You know, this factor combined with this factor combined with this factor will lead to what? A particular variable. So if you miss out on some of the factors, that when you analyze your data, it may be inaccurate. So that will compromise your data integrity, you see, because you don't have the total picture. I notice here, perhaps you are too quick into starting the analysis before doing proper planning on the methodology of your analysis. What are the factors that you need to look into to come up with that equation and then to find out, what's really happening in totality. So, and then also next, who has the data? If, in research, sometimes the data is already sitting somewhere. You just need to get it. Sometimes you need to pay for it. Sometimes you just have to say to someone, hey, I need the data. Would you mind giving it to me? Sometimes, most of the time, I can get my data for free. It's just that I can give them some other data. That's why the data as a commodity, exchange the data. Sometimes they never use that data. They're so happy to give the data to me. So if the data is sitting somewhere, you don't have to spend the time to go and have some system to extract the data. Maybe just extract it from another person's system that's sitting somewhere. So I guess I thought Dr. Aliza used the word collaborative approach to managing data. I think this is the big picture that we need to have right now for FM, so that you can move forward better by having clean data and the right data, comprehensive, complete data to make accurate decisions. I don't know, what do you think, Encik Sharai? Is that a valid point?
Yeah, it's a valid point, because of the, for example, a simple notion, the finance keep the inventory data of the assets, but they never bother want to detail it out, because for them, they just want to capture the one value only, And then meanwhile, the FMers hire somebody else to gather the data, So because for them, they want to go for the life cycle. But both of them, finance and FMs, are going to get benefit on the life cycle management, Because at the end of the day, the finance are going to spend the right amount of money, and then the FM will get the right amount of budget. But because they are not talking about the data that they have, these people don't have, it's not like, so at the end up, they just spend more money to build another data. So I think this is something like, sometimes I said that I couldn't brain it, because we did the implementation of something related with this asset. And sometimes because of these 2-3 departments don't talk about it, then the bigger organization are going to spend or losing money of their assets, because they need to spend another money on top of it for the sake of it, because both of you cannot give me the result. So I create another new project replacing the asset. So it is something like that I see that is a waste of the industry money, or maybe if the government, is a waste of the government money, because for the sake of, you are not really understand about what data that you have, whether you are appreciating the data or not, and you are not updating the data according to the rule and regulation that you're supposed to do. So end up that the FMs are losing in terms of not get enough budget for maintaining of the assets. So I think this is something that's we need to really look back about this data, about the integrity element. It's not just about the preparation, the integrity element to prepare the data, but the integrity element to update, to make sure the data is being used is another element. So this is like maybe touching about, we talk about the preparing the data is technical side, but another social aspect is the integrity of these people to make sure that this data being updated and always been correct information inside this information, inside as a data. So these are on the social science aspects, So these both are related, but then we spend more money and for the sake to build up new asset, new data, replacement asset, replacement data. So, and we produce good graph on research because of we said that we can expand the assets, But in reality, we doesn't even know how many assets that we have. As simple as
I think it's interesting that when you mentioned Sharain about that, it touches on the issue of knowledge management.
Yes.
That's why in organizations now they have the chief knowledge officer. They can map out where is the data in the organization, who is the data owner, and this also touches on the issue of change management. That's why I said when the organizations come to my expert lab, they want to talk about digital transformation. They can transform their assets, their physical assets, but the asset in here the people, the
People.
leaders in here, that we need to change the mindset. Usually, one thing that we do that seems to work a lot is to drum into people like awareness programs and repeatedly awareness of the value of what they do. Like you mentioned just now, they don't realize the importance, the significance of the information that they're capturing, the significance of sharing that information, for example. So that's part of the change management initiative that organizations have to instill, have to implement, yeah, whenever they undergo digital transformation. That's very, very important, actually.
So we have another question here from Mr. Chan. Sometimes the data was generated in different departments like procurement and finance, but due to the different system used, we cannot integrate the data for asset lifecycle. We need to generate another set of data for analysis purpose due to no common data environment within the organization. I think he's already answered it. So I may add this to this. So those days, we want to send a letter, So then later post Malaysia or maybe post Malaysia, I think maybe post department establish the postcodes. Imagine that if we don't have the postcode, so what happened also all of our correspondence? So that postcode is actually the process of the standardization. Okay, when Mr. Chan said that the other department, different procurement, finance created, different of data, but fundamentally the data is always be the same. Procurement buy the car, finance pay for the car, maintenance maintains the car. It's always about the car, the assets. But how can these three departments cannot sit down to create the standard information of the asset? Or maybe one department think about it because of this information are going to be used across the department, across the organization. Again, like Dr. Intan cakap, the knowledge management. So knowledge, I always like, when talk about knowledge management, I always like to apply the IKW. Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So this is Peter Drucker book, the book that I love to read. Of course, it's not one book; it's about 4 books: a data book, information book, knowledge book, and wisdom books. Okay, so the notion of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom is always can be applied when talk about managing data. Data you're not collecting, you cannot create the information. When you share the information, you create knowledge. When you have a knowledge, that came for the wisdom. So again, because we don't understand the important thing of this data availability, data concept, the standard way of doing things, we are unable to create the knowledge to create this data structure, to create the analogy of standardization. So I think another level of the National Registration Department create the IC number. Imagine those days, we create the running numbers. We doesn't even know when we read the IC and which year, so location, which state, Then they come up with their standardization, and then they call it data dictionary sector awam, and they create the standardization whereby that IC number can process, can make our computer to process the data. Otherwise, if we still use the old IC number, how can we do the good analysis when we talk about to analyze the people? Not even yet analyze the people behavior based on which state, based on what. So this is the standardization element that we need. If we talk about when we want to create the data structure, so we need to understand about the standardization. When we talk about BIM to FM, the manufacturer will come up with the standardization, but we forgot about it. Maybe because we don't understand about the standardization program or process, But again, it's all about knowledge. So sorry, I answered that, Doctor. So maybe you have another, Dr. Aliza, input on that,
Well, I guess, the fact to the matter is that once you understand that a data is, it can be used in many different ways, in many different forms, across many different elements, then you can see there is this significant element of interconnectedness, which is basically the whole crux of Internet of Things, actually, the interconnectedness of devices, of gadgets. So if we cannot understand that basic principle, then there's no way we can do digital transformation. We have to be able to understand that one piece of data, right, can many different factors, many different individuals, many different divisions, all across. So I mean, we've all come across this basic problem where, each division in the same organization is different, is using a different system, a different process, and that's the reason why the data, it's not able to communicate with one another, right? So, but again, if we break it down to basics, it's all about interconnectivity. If the systems, if the processes, if the organization does not take that step to make sure that all of the systems are connected, all of the processes are connected, despite the differences in terms of use, right? Then that will basically help the organization to really leverage on the amount of data. Organization can have access to so much of data, right, within itself, in fact. And sometimes a person, and a staff, an employee is not able to access the data simply because, it's on a different system, it's in a different process, it's in a different form. So, when you look at it, the solution is so simple, but somehow or other organizations are still stuck on legacy systems, on legacy assets. An organization can have thousands of assets, 80% will be legacy assets, and it's just so this is where, I think that's the other challenge to digital transformation. We are so hung up on our assets. We keep having assets when we fail to realize that, we have assets that we can fully leverage on, that we have not even actually, fully utilized, fully optimized. And I think that's adding on to the cost to an organization. Ken?
I think another thing, and I noticed with systems, because I used to work very much with IT people, in my previous organizations. I'm always involved in developing systems, and I noticed that sometimes, when you produce a system that produces data, but I think data visualization is also very important. Sometimes the data is there, but the way that the data is presented, that people don't understand, people get the wrong meaning from the data. And this also, from my reading of the latest FM challenges and reports, is one of the key issues. When you're trying to locate a system, for you to purchase, you look for the ability of the system to produce high quality data visualization that many people can understand, and not just those analysts, those highly technical people can understand. So I think data visualization, the ability for the system to present the data in visuals for people to easily understand it is also important. I think that's another thing that I want to add also. I noticed. Okay, I don't know, in FM, when you see all the dashboards, right? It's important also how the data is presented. Yeah, because the data, it has to be interpreted, right?
So that's where the element, the digital twin came back, even though it's been promoted since 2002. but now it's become famous again because of the impact of the visualization. So when people able to visualize, so they can look on the from many angles about the data that they have. Okay, so that's where the digital twins now no longer for FM. Even now the digital twin is people from healthcare industry also talk about digital twins. So it's good, but it's no longer about the 3D models, but it talk about more than that, digital twins. So very good. I think I like it. Okay, Doctor. I think Dr. Aliza, Dr. Intan, I think we already exceeded the time that we permitted to do. Anything from both of you? Any last words or any remarks that you want before we end the session? Because we're already almost 9:30 and we still have, thank you, we still have 85 people that stay with us. It's good. So,
I thank everybody here for listening in, and I hope that I have lent a fresh perspective to all the facilities management practitioners here. And I think we just have to, and everything that we do, we just have to come back to the very basics. Why we do it, how does it impact people at the end of the day. Thank you.
Dr. Aliza?
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the discussion. It's been a while that this discussion. I've had a discussion on big data. So thank you very much. I am honored to be here. Thank you, Dr. Intan. Thank you, Mr. Sharon. I think at the end of the day, people need to realize that data, no matter what type of data that we come across, that we have, it will always have some significance. So I think it's important for us to be able to treat it well, right? It may not be significant for us or as significant for us as to another person or as to another organization or as to another department. So I think to see that we would always be able to have some form of use for it, not for ourselves maybe, but for others. So that's the only way where we will be able to appreciate, and I think that would actually bring value to the organization as a whole. Right. So thank you very much, Dr. Sharon.
Okay, I think thank you for this from the speaker, Dr. Intan Soraya and Dr. Aliza. And I think it's we look like that we have covered to all speakers. Thank you very much, Dr. Intan. Hope Dr. Aliza, hope that we can invite you again with in any of the event that maybe we will involve, or maybe we are going to host it in future. And before we end this webinar session, participant, please take out a few moments, fill in feedback form to obtain CCD and CPD point from CIDB. The link for the feedback form already been posted in the chat box section, and you can also scan the QR codes on the screen now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, CIDB, for making this webinar success. We appreciate for everybody of you that together here, and thank you again, and join us for another 2 more weeks, or maybe in future. I think maybe on 21st of June, if I'm mistaken, with another round of webinar. So thank you very much.